Welcome to Greenable Woodbridge. I am your host, Carolyn Ehrlich, and today we are with Margaret Liu, who is the chapter chair of the NJPIRG student branch at chapter at Rutgers. And you are working on a great campaign called Save the Bees.
Yes.
And when I heard about it from you, I said, oh my gosh, this has to be a TV show, because this is something that people need to understand and learn about. And I want to start just by talking a little bit about bees and pollination and pollinator gardens, because I think for a lot of people, bees are just a pest. They're, oh, look, a bee. Let's,
Yes.
let's get out of the way. Don't get stung. And they don't understand how very, very important they are to our food chain and our life in general. So do you want to first start talking about pollination and the role that bees play?
Yes, so like you said, bees aren't the only kind of pollinator. We know that there are pollinators like ants or butterflies, but bees, particularly honeybees, are the most prolific pollinators because there's no real other pollinator like bees particularly honeybees, that congregate in very large groups, and that's, the whole colony's purpose is to pollinate. So the importance of bees and pollinators in general is because pollinators and bees, they pollinate 80% of all the flowering plants, and so without pollinators, we wouldn't have a third of the food that we eat today. So that's why they're very, very important. Pollination is when they, take the pollen from plant to plant, and they allow, whatever pollen they pick up gets transferred to the flowering plants, and that's what allows the plants to fully bloom and grow and then become the food that we eat today. So that's why they're very, very important, not just for the ecosystems that they're in, but for us.
Absolutely. So a pollinator garden, that's one of the things that we're trying to encourage all over town. Do they have to be a certain type of flowering plant, or can it be anything and anywhere?
So they do have to be native plants. They have to be, native to the region or native to New Jersey in order for the honeybees or just really any pollinator to be able to, consume them and help them pollinate.
Right.
A pollinator garden doesn't have to be, the size of a community garden that you might see in like your county or your city. It really, when you're maybe driving along the highway and you see those little patches of flowers, that's really all a honeybee or any pollinator needs. Pollinators are small, they're not looking to,
They could be as long as the parkway and as small as the little patch in your backyard.
Exactly.
So I have to tell you, over the last few years, the Department of Transportation started planting along the side of the highway these beautiful, what I thought were just plain wildflowers. And so I called up my contact at the Department of Transportation and I said, can you give me that seed mixture? Because I want to have some wildflower gardens in the places where we're now mowing lawns and replace it with these flowers. I had no idea until I actually had a meeting with the head of the Department of Transportation that they were pollinators.
Yes.
And so they really are, they can be on the highway, they can be in parks, they could be anywhere, and especially in your front and backyards.
Yeah, exactly.
So, are they hard to plant?
No, they're not very hard, and if you look online, I do believe there's a Native Plant Association within New Jersey. That can be a really great resource to, for individuals to find what native plants are native to their regions or what they would be able to grow. This is really important for pollinators because, without these native plants, they essentially they can't help us, with these flowering plants or these flowers, but they also can't help themselves. They need these plants in order to be able to survive.
Very good. So one of the things that we've been trying to do as a town is to encourage no-mow.
Yes.
And so talk about how this can help that no-mow theory.
Yes, so call it no-mow May. But yeah, essentially, well, when you mow your lawn, it doesn't really allow for the growth of these native plants. So we encourage people to, during these warmer months when, they want their lawns looking tidy and things, to not mow the lawn, because that doesn't really allow for the growth of these native plants. It kind of limits where these native plants can grow and also how quickly they can grow. So we do encourage, for individual action, that's definitely something that people can do to promote native plant growth.
And if they replace some of the grass with these gardens,
right,
then they're still beautiful, and
exactly.
It doesn't look like they have grass growing too high and they're aggravating their neighbors.
Yeah.
Because we're a very green lawn conscious society.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is backwards thinking, but it is important to start rethinking how we deal with our lawns. And one of the things, talking of lawns, we'd like to have beautiful green lawns and we want them to grow, and so what do people put on them?
Pesticides, fertilizers.
Right,
yeah.
And so talk about that a little, why that's not such a good idea.
So pesticides and fertilizers in general don't have to be inherently bad, but there is a specific pesticide that has really, really detrimented pollinators, and it's a pesticide called neonicotinoids, or short neonics. Neonicotinoids is a bit of a mouthful. But the reason that these were introduced in the U.S. Some before the 2000s, but since being introduced, they've made agriculture for pollinators 50 times more dangerous.
Oh.
The reason it is so dangerous for pollinators is because it attacks their nervous system, and the plant is either treated by coating the seed or by drenching the roots in the pesticide. So the entirety of the plant has neonics within it, and this means when the pollinator ingests it, they lose their ability, their motor skills, they lose the ability to navigate, so they can't find the plants or they can't find their way back home, and eventually leads to paralysis and then unfortunately, killing the bee or whatever pollinator ingests it. And then in terms of how it, affects the reproduction or the development of bees, bee larvae, bees that are born either don't have the ability to navigate, they have no wings, their wings may be fused, and so this is why we are now seeing, in New Jersey alone, 50 to 70% of bee colonies die every single year. So, it's come to the point where people have
That's horrible.
Yeah, people have to ship in Italian bees because there aren't enough, bees to actually exist. So it's really, really detrimental to the pollinators, and it's really hard. It's not something that can really have in agriculture without really affecting the pollinators.
Which leads to your motivation
Yes.
for the your Save the Bees campaign.
Yes.
So let's talk about that campaign, because now we understand why it's so vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you do to help save the bees?
So right now there actually is a statewide ban in New Jersey, banning neonics, but it's only for non-agricultural uses, which doesn't do too much for pollinators because the way that they ingest these neonics is through agriculture, through plants. So what we want to do is expand on that, and that's why we're going to cities to get them to pass resolutions that will expand the ban to include the banning of neonics for agricultural uses, but also do things like plant more pollinator gardens and engage with the community about pollinators so that people can really understand the importance of bees and why neonics are so bad and what individuals can do to help pollinators and then help themselves in the process.
Right. So you mentioned you've been going around to towns. That's how I met you.
Yes.
You came by to visit the mayor, and the mayor said, "Hey, that's Carol's thing. Go talk to Carol." and it was really great because, like I said, every time I talk to you guys, I've learned something, and hoping that everybody who's watching is learning. So, what are some of the other towns you've been going to, and how's the response been?
So we've met with 8 cities,
Wow.
including Woodbridge, just this past school year, so including this semester and last semester. And the response has been pretty positive. It's definitely a different response or a different focus when we meet with cities. So, you know, some cities might really latch on to the idea of where they can plant pollinator gardens more. Other cities might really latch on to the ways that we can engage with their community. So recently just met with Jamesburg and Monroe, and they were really excited about, you know, the opportunity to work with their schools and what, you know, their community can do, you know, events like that. Other towns we've met with, Middletown and Berkeley Heights. Middletown was really already thinking about some of the places where they could, you know, plant those native plants for pollinator gardens.
Right.
In Berkeley Heights, I believe, if I recall correctly, liked the thought of, you know, working with their schools and really engaging with their environmental council. So never a negative response, but always like more questions, because this is
it's new.
Yeah, it's a new topic, and there are a lot of moving parts. So it's great to, like, it's always a continual process once we meet with the city and see what they need and how we can help in the ways that they are thinking.
And this show is part of the educational
Yes.
outreach that you asked me to do.
Yes.
And then we will continue from there. So we plant a lot of rain gardens. Are they pollinator gardens also? They have all native flowers, and so I'm assuming that each one of our rain gardens is also a pollinator garden.
Yeah, if a pollinator garden is, again, it's not, you know, defined by its size. It's defined, does it have native plants? Does it have open space where, you know, the pollinators can move freely? Obviously no pesticide, or not no pesticides, but no neonics or pesticides that won't really harm the pollinators. So if it has native plants and it has all those things, then for sure it would be a native.
I like the way you differentiated between, it's not all herbicides that are bad.
Yeah.
There are some that you can use, and you have to check within them. So that's important to know. We just planted one on New Dover Road, where we've been planting trees there, and now in the fall we planted a new garden. We work a lot with Rutgers.
Oh, really?
They're one of their departments. They do all of our rain gardens, and they helped us build that pollinator garden. And we're seeing a lot of interest in our schools. They're part of the Sustainable Jersey School Program, and this is one of the things that they can do to get action points. So it really is, it's really growing. And so what are some of the other, how the Rutgers students, how do you reach out to them and how do they react to it?
So I think, you know, when it comes to any sort of activism, I think the youth can be particularly hesitant about, you know, and not so much because of the actual campaign that we're running, but more so thinking, you know, can I really make a difference? Like, how can I make a difference? You know, because I think the youth often feel that there isn't that much they can do. So what we try and do is, you know, make things very simple. We have petitions where they can sign on and support based on their hometown or whatever city they're from. And we have these petitioning events or these educational awareness events. We try to make them, you know, engaging. So got a little
fun.
bee costume. We go around campus.
I saw
and we
a picture of you guys in your bee costume.
Yeah, I wear that around campus all the time. Or we, you know, try to center things around like very notable dates. So, you know, without bees, we wouldn't have some of our favorite foods at Thanksgiving. So we, you know, center themed events. Or Valentine's Day, we, you know, without bees, we wouldn't have chocolate, flowers. So centering.
Chocolate?
Yeah, chocolate is a flowering plant. So, you know, without bees, we wouldn't have a lot of these things that maybe we center our holidays around. So those are some ways that we kind of engage with the community. And it's always, you know, it's like always like, would you like to sign a petition to save the bees? And people are always super on board. We get to talk with them about, you know, some of the things I've discussed with you. And it's fun to see them be really surprised at, you know, how impactful pollinators are and the things that are going on with them. So yeah, I love working with the students.
I always think like the younger people are more active. Maybe that's from me having grown up in the 60s when we were all very, very active and optimistic and full of a lot of hope. But I think it's very different for your generation.
I think once youth get involved in activism, they become very lively and very excited, you know, especially when you work in local politics. You know, the the team that we have working on the bees campaign right now is so consistent. They're always really excited to hear what we have to do, and they're always willing to, try out whatever strategy that we need. It's more so, I think, hesitant about feeling like whether they can make a difference, but once I think they start to see that change and get involved, the response has been like very, very gratifying, very encouraging.
That is great. And one of the things that I've always said is every one little step is important. You don't have to change the world all at one time.
Yes.
But if you convince one person to, plant a garden or stop mowing their lawn or whatever, you're doing the right thing. You're winning the battle.
Definitely.
Are there other groups that you collaborate with or work with?
There aren't groups currently on campus that we work on with this particular campaign, but there are, of course, other environmental groups on campus that, try and work on building community spaces or on just like overall, co-sponsoring maybe some of the events that we have. I think it's like all interconnected, so then when you think of like this group that's trying to build a community space, then maybe you can think about the ways that that community space can be used to help pollinators and things of that nature.
Oh, that is perfect.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things that your chapter is working on?
Yeah, so NJPIRG is not just an environmental nonprofit. NJPIRG stands for the New Jersey Public Interest Research Group, so any campaign that is of the public interest is something that we try and work on. So right now we are running campaigns to fight hunger and homelessness in New Brunswick, increase textbook affordability on campus, as well as get more students ready or registered for the upcoming elections. Yes.
That's all four of those are
great.
Very, very important. Do you want to go into any detail about any of those?
Yeah, so for the hunger and homelessness campaign, that is a very service-based campaign, a very, very popular campaign on campus. We run lots of clothing drives, food drives. Just 2 weekends ago, we were able to collect over 1,000 donations in clothing for our clothing drives. So,
very nice.
Yeah, it's always very, very generous donations from the surrounding community when it comes to the hunger and homelessness campaign. And there are definitely a lot of, with all of the campaigns, there's a way to collaborate with groups on campus, but there are a lot of like philanthropy groups as well as service groups on campus that we like to partner with. And so that's a really great campaign. The textbooks campaign, we started a program on campus called the Open and Affordable Textbooks Program, and it essentially rewards professors who make the change to more affordable texts or more affordable resources or just free resources that students don't have to pay for, and then hundreds of students end up benefiting from that. So we work on trying to get more professors signed on to that, as well as like increasing how many resources can be given to professors from that program. And then for the New Voters Project, that's our voter campaign. We are trying to get students registered to vote, but also work with other groups on campus to really prepare for the big election in the fall.
Wow, that is all good causes. You must be busy all the time. Do you have any time left to do your schoolwork?
I do. I try to make time, try to balance things.
It is so great, and it's kind of motivating.
Yeah.
That, and I'm sure some of our listeners, their kids are thinking about going to Rutgers, and I think this is a good sales for Rutgers too. It's a great school right in our backyard.
Yes,
so
I think there's so many different opportunities at Rutgers, and like just talking about this one club that has such a diverse range of opportunities, I think you can completely make change in whatever capacity you want. So yeah, it is very encouraging to think about the things that are going on campus.
It really, really is. We're about to end this. Let's go back to the bees, and we talked a little bit about. What was that number you said before about the percentage of bees that are dying out?
50 to 70% on average every year in New Jersey alone.
Per year. That is so scary.
Yeah.
What would happen if the bees became extinct?
Yeah, well, you know, like I said before, they pollinate 80% of our flowering plants, which means that 35% of the food that we eat today, 1 in every, 3 bites of food would just be gone. And, it's not just about the food. Obviously, these flowering plants provide us with essential sustenance and nutrition. So
Right.
without the bees and pollinators, we would really be at a loss. Not just that, obviously the bees are a keystone species. Without them pollinating all of these flowering plants, how will mammals, in those ecosystems even be able to, provide for themselves as well? So it's really important for us, but also for our surrounding environment. And then if that surrounding environment collapses, how will that affect us as well? These are questions we might not fully be able to answer, but you can imagine, the really drastic ways that we would have to adjust, or the really drastic ways that we would have to, our lives would be changed. So
Yeah, I mean, starvation would not just be, hunger would not just be for, sadly, poor people. It would be for all of us. It would be something we would all have to deal with. So it's important that this is so vital.
Yeah.
And so let's end on a positive note and re-talk about what our residents can do, how they can help.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, there are tons of resources online where you can see what native plants you can grow in your own backyard, and nurture those plants so that pollinators can really benefit from that increase in like more habitats that they can benefit off of.
Right.
There No-mow May, not mowing your lawn for the upcoming month to really promote the growth of those native plants. We also do have a petition online. If you go to environmentamerica.org and then try and just type in the search bar petition to save the bees. We have a few petitions that people can sign in support of these resolutions that will stop the use of neonics and just help pollinators.
And talk to their neighbors and get
Yes.
get a buzz going.
Yes. Educate yourselves on the importance of pollinators and what they do. Run events, talk to your friends and your family, and just think about pollinators more than sometimes the pests that are coming at you in the summer.
Well, you're doing a great job, and thank you so much for everything you
much.
do and everything your organization does.
Thank you, of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So thank you for being part of the excitement and part of the change. Thank you for watching Greenable Woodbridge.